Well, good evening. I just need to inform someone that we're going live. Live now. Okay. Well, good evening. We're in day 17. It's been a big day. Victor did not want to go to sleep, so that's why I'm late. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to get into it because I've got sermon prep to do for tomorrow. We're starting our new series on the letters to the Corinthians, so you don't want to miss that one. That one's going to be fun. So please join us tomorrow at 10:30 New South Wales time, 9:30 Queensland time. But for now, we've got Proverbs. Father, I just want to thank you for this time that we can come together and that we can meditate on your wisdom and and marinate in your wisdom. So, Father, just fill us with insight and with your character. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, just make sure that we're going live here. Get the chat up. Turn the sound off on my phone. That'll help. Yep, so we are live. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to start with verse 1, chapter 17, verse 1. Better is a dry crust of bread where there is quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. Yeah, okay, so feasting with strife is something I know about. I grew up in a house with 5 kids. I was the oldest of 5, and there was a fair bit of strife with that sort of a family, and especially with the family that I was part of. And I got to tell you, I'm a pretty strong extrovert, but I did tend to close myself off in that situation quite a bit. So, better is a crust of dry bread where there is, peace. Peace is something that you can't value. You can't put a price tag. It's priceless. And so yeah, dry crust, something that just sustains you while you have peace, is worth more than feasting with strife. I would guarantee that in most cases. So, verse 2: a servant who acts wisely will rule over an heir who behaves shamefully, and will share the inheritance along with the relatives. Oh, who do we know from the Bible who this might be referring to? I like when we find Bible stories for some of these. A servant who acts wisely will rule over an heir who behaves shamefully, and will share the inheritance along with the relatives. Now, it's not necessarily an heir who behaves shamefully, but we've got Joseph, the story of Joseph. He was a servant who ruled. He was second in command, which means that he would have been over the prince. He would have been over Pharaoh's child and heir. Now, the point of this is wisdom elevates us. Wisdom elevates us in people's regard, and he did share the inheritance along with the relatives. I mean, he got Goshen for his people, so that's an interesting one that I'm seeing here. Verse 3: the crucible is for refining silver. Actually, let me just put this up so if people join us, they know what passage we're in, what chapter we're in. There we go. The crucible is for refining silver, and the furnace is for gold. Likewise, Yahweh tests hearts. Okay, so this is a truism. Yahweh tests hearts. How does he test them? Well, if we go by the two other examples here, we have a crucible and a furnace. Those are places of heat, and God is a refining fire, and he uses heat to test our hearts. Not that he is, God doesn't tempt, the Bible tells us, but he does trial. He does test us. He's not tempting us. That means he's not beckoning us towards evil, but he does allow tests of our character, with the caveat there that he provides the power for us to pass the tests. He just wants to see whether we will choose to work in his power. So there's that one. That's verse 3. Verse 4: one who acts wickedly pays attention to evil counsel. A liar listens to a malicious tongue. So this is saying that someone who acts evilly is doing so because they've somehow listened to to evil counsel or a malicious tongue. We see that story that comes to mind with that one would be obviously in the garden. Eve didn't act like she didn't sin without there being a voice that was beckoning her towards that. Now, the evil counsel, if you throw yourself in a lot of people who are acting in ways that are evil, you're going to fall in with that. You're going to fall in with their example, and so yeah, I think the other thing that I could say there is sometimes we listen to our self-talk. Our own tongue can be the malicious tongue that drives us and spurs us forward in sin. So you've got to be careful. And I'm not just talking about sin. I'm just talking about various things. Like I have someone close to me who is in kind of a bit of a panic spiral at the moment, and I had to share with her, you've got to stop this self-talk. You've got to leave that at the door, because that's actually self-defeating talk. And you need to, you've had a setback in this thing, but that's okay. We can get through it. We just need to, go back to the drawing board, and we can work this. So you've got to, that's even just on a side of depression. But imagine what it's like with sin. If you self-talk, you can self-talk your way into exacerbating the sin that you're experiencing. So, that's a good one. Verse 4. Verse 5. The one who mocks the poor insults his creator. Whoever rejoices over disaster will not go unpunished. Okay, we've talked about some of these proverbs before, and if you mock these proverbs about not mocking people or not devaluing people, when you devalue a person, you devalue the person who created that person. It's just it's pure logic there. And so one of my favorite sayings, that the reason it's a favorite is because it's one of the most challenging to my heart, is that you only love Jesus, or you only love God, as much as the person you love the least. And so, that's because God created all people. So if you manifest or have, it's not even manifest, sometimes you're cut off from manifesting, but if you harbor anything but pure love towards people, then whoever you are who are harboring the least love towards, that's how you feel about God. That's how you feel about Jesus. It doesn't mean you can't still have be offended or have to set boundaries. Boundaries are okay. God sets boundaries. God sets boundaries with those people that He loves. It's not about that. It's about just love. It's about regard. It's about value. Whoever you value, whatever the least value you've placed on a person, whether because of arbitrary features like gender, racial, melanin, anything like that, or even just things that they might have done to you. Anyone that you've devalued as a person is a devaluation of God and of Christ. So whoever rejoices over disaster will not go unpunished. That one's a challenge to me, because there have been times where I've engaged in what the Germans call Schadenfreude, which is when people that you would consider your opponents get a setback. And so I wonder how much that would speak to that. That's probably something where I need to go, okay, no, I need to watch myself not to rejoice when someone else goes through tragedy, because that could be me. So I can take that one on board. That one's one I'll take to heart. Verse 6. Grandchildren are like a crown to the elderly, and the glory of children is their parents. Grandchildren are like a crown to the elderly. That's, in some ways, because, by the time you get to the point of being a grandparent, you're at the sunset of your life, of your career, and you've got time to enjoy grandchildren, whereas you might not have had that time to invest with your children, has hands-on. Um, so that's something that could be relevant here. The glory of children is their parents. So if we're looking at glory and crown being synonyms here, grandchildren crown the grandparents, parents crown the children. And that's because I look at my children, and my children look to me to receive their validation. Okay, they look to me to receive their. So I crown them. I get to crown them, and then they in turn can crown their grandparents. So this one's a very a nice one. It's a very nice one to think about, especially as you go through life cycles. Verse 7, excessive speech is not becoming for a fool. How much less are lies for a ruler? Excessive speech. So the more that we speak, this is another one of those proverbs that's to do with the more that we speak and express ourselves, the more that we can trip over our words, the more that we can set traps for ourselves, and lies, excessive lies, are something that will get in the way of a ruler. So there's a note here on verse 23. So the ruler is a gentleman with a code of honor to whom truthfulness is second nature. So what it's saying here is, rulers will avoid lies if they're going to continue to rule. And so excessive speech shows up a fool, and lies are unbecoming for a ruler. So that's the parallel there. Verse 8, a bribe works like a charm for the one who offers it. In whatever he does, he succeeds. So this one is a bit of an ironic one, because it's not saying that bribes are... this is a statement without affirming the idea. So it's saying that bribes work. Okay, bribes can work. It's not saying bribes are good. Okay, so it's not a moral endorsement of bribery. It's just saying that bribes work. And it leaves you as the reader going, okay, so do I like this idea? Do you like the idea that people out there succeed through an ill-gotten method? You're not supposed to. And other places in Proverbs we've already looked at have told us that bribery is not good. But when we come to something like this, it helps us to... It's a window into the way the world works, not a window into the way the world should work. This type of proverb, and so what we're doing is we're seeing, okay, it will bring you success, but at what cost? At what cost? Well, at the cost of integrity. Verse 9: the one who forgives an offense seeks love, but whoever repeats a matter separates close friends. So yeah, the contrast here is between whether someone is willing to bury an offense and seek, to maintain loving relationships and loving, covenantal togetherness, versus someone who multiplies the offense by repeating it and sows discord beyond the two that are already affected, like in a greater way. I've definitely been the recipient of this type of action in terms of the repeating a matter, and I would say that there's times that I've also repeated things that I shouldn't have. It's like easy to do. It's easy to do as humans, but I have sought in many ways to seek forgiveness when I've done that, and also my preference when someone offends me is to forgive, because I know how much I have been forgiven and how much I've needed to be forgiven. And that's, what are you seeking? Are you seeking love, or are you seeking to divide? Is the question that comes out of this one. Verse 10: a rebuke makes a greater impression on a discerning person than 100 blows on a fool. So what this is? yeah, what in the old days when uh, corporal punishment was, as in smacking, was allowed. I know of a person who would receive a belting, and then when the parent got to the door, they would then hurl obscenities at the parent, and then they'd get another belting, and they would scream through the belting, and then the same thing would, and this could repeat dozens of times. This could repeat to the point where you were afraid for what was happening there. And so I understand this in an experiential way, that corporal punishment does not, and it didn't change that person. It didn't help that person. It may have done damage to that person. But if you are a discerning person, if you are someone who is seeking to analyze your life and make corrections where they're possible to make, like where you need them, a rebuke is going to be more impactful than 100 blows on someone who isn't even seeking to change, isn't seeking to be corrected. Verse 11, an evil person seeks only rebellion, and so a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Okay, so there's a note here. I want to kind of understand this one. Those bent on rebellion will meet with retribution. The messenger could well be a merciless messenger from the king, but the expression could also figuratively describe something God sends: storms, pestilence, or other misfortune. So this is one of those things that is the cause, one of those cause and effect or consequence proverbs, where you've got people who are seeking rebellion, they will find it, and it will be multiplied back upon them. Because if you sow rebellion, you will have rebellion. You'll face and have that come back upon you. It's like if you sow growth and leadership and love and inspire people, you're going to reap that as well. So you get to choose. You get to choose, what are you putting out into the world today, tomorrow, the next day. Verse 12. It is better for a person to meet a mother bear being robbed of her cubs than to encounter a fool in his folly. Oh, that I've seen this one before, and it always is like I picture it in my head, someone coming up and interrupting a mother bear trying to protect her cubs, versus, I mean, you've probably been engaged in it. You're watching this online. How many online debates have you been in which you look back and you go, why did I even go there? What did I get out of that? And you might have pulled your hair out over it, and it's because you've been talking to someone who isn't even open-minded. They're not even there. I mean, I had someone who was in the comments a couple of days ago, and I'm talking about Proverbs, and this guy's talking about, there was cannabis in the cannabis oil in the communion bread in Jesus' day. I'm like, dude, where are you even going with this? Like, no one asked you this. No one talked about this. And so he just was volunteering stuff up. I had to block him because it was just a distraction for people watching on YouTube. I'm happy if that person if he's, Barney Rubble, if you're watching and you want to do a program on that and you want to talk about that sometime, invite me on, or you can come on and we could talk about that particular thing. Send me some material, but honestly, like, stay on topic. He could have even been an AI bot, someone was saying. So, what if that's the comparison that's being made, and obviously it's hyperbole, obviously it's overdrawn, but why would we place ourselves in situations? Jesus' counsel was to dust off your feet, because you don't want anything of that clinging to you. Leave the place, dust your feet off. Don't let anything of that attitude cling to you. It's folly is faithlessness as well. So that's how I would see that. Verse 13. As for the one who repays evil for good, evil will not leave his house. Okay, so something good happens, but you repay evil. I mean, there's something really messed up with that. If someone does good for you and then you do something evil to them, then evil is bad just in and of itself, but evil is like doubly bad when you're doing the evil in response to something good someone has done for you. And so basically it's saying evil will cling to that person. They will reap the rewards of it. It's another cause and effect one. Verse 14, starting a quarrel is like letting out water. Stop it before strife breaks out. So letting out water is the metaphor here. So to set free. So it's to set free the water. The image involves a small leak in a container or cistern that starts to spurt out water. The problem gets worse if it is not stopped. So I was in the Navy, and we did a lot of, in recruit school, we would be placed in these compartments that were very similar to a ship, and we had to patch up leaks. And the thing about leaks and the thing about water is one of the most powerful forces on Earth. I mean, the Grand Canyon, Mount St. Helens, when it erupted, and the flow of just liquid magma and everything that came out of that carved out a structure very similar, not at the scale, but similar to the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon would have been carved out in the post-flood, settlements of the way the waters were. Water is so powerful. I mean, once a leak starts, especially if you're talking clay pots and cisterns and stuff like that, as the water is coming out, each time that water is going through, it is carrying particles of the surrounding hole and making it bigger bit by bit. So you've got to stop it before it makes it too hard to stop. So starting a quarrel is the same as that. So once you start something, you have no idea where it's going to end up. When you start that quarrel, who knows what it's going to look like in 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years. You could get to the stage where you don't even know why you started the argument, but there's this rift and this division. I mean, I'm in a situation like that. I mean, I know how I started, and I tried to stop it, but it couldn't stop. But I am completely persona non grata from my former church, like in this insane series of events that is like, how did we even get here? And there are, I mean, I love the path that God has fixed for me since then, but there's a lot of regret that I have over how it got there, and there are times that I think, what could I have done differently to have stopped that and stemmed that tide? So yeah, definitely don't start quarrels. And if you've started one, see if you can quickly scale that back. You don't have to be wrong to repent. You don't have to be wrong about the content or the topic. You could just leave that on the shelf and go, okay, or even just count yourself as right about that. But if you've done something wrong in the process of how you've talked to someone, go and leave your gift at the altar. Don't let the sun go down. Go and solve that quickly. Don't let it get out of hand. How we go about things is often more important than what our belief system is. I would prefer, take that. Go back to our first one here, where it's like, better is a dry crust of bread where there is quietness than a house full of feasting with strife. Go to that one for a second and replace the crust of bread with a morsel of truth, and the feasting with a banquet of truth. All right? I would prefer to be just dining on a morsel of truth in peace with people around me than feasting on things that are like, everything is true, this thing's true, that thing's true, this thing's true, yet there's strife and everyone is in contention over it. I would much prefer that. I'd prefer to hang around people who don't have the whole truth but love each other than to be around people who know everything that God has ever wanted to reveal, and yet they can't stand each other, and they show that by their actions. That's where I rest today. Verse 15: the one who acquits the guilty and the one who condemns the innocent, both of them are an abomination to Yahweh. The one who, yeah, okay, obviously, like we have a sense of justice, right? We have a sense that comes from God, and I love the moral argument for the existence of God, because people are like, there's this innate sense of justice. Now sometimes where our standard is off, because a lot of people don't recognize the standard of God's justice, but there are some things that are just, like prima facie, like to almost everyone, they're injustice, they're matters of injustice. So where does that come from? Where does that idea come from? It comes from it comes from a moral absolute being. That's what it comes from. It like the fact that we think that something is right or not right means that we have a sense that there is something that is righter or rightest. Like that. That's what we're contrasting it to, even if we don't know what that is. And so God is that one. He's the one who declares these things abominations when someone acquits the guilty or when someone condemns the innocent. Verse 16, of what use is money in the hand of a fool, since he has no intention of acquiring wisdom? So yeah, like if a fool has money, it's no use to them. It's not gonna last long. Fools, I mean, like most people. We've talked about this. The high percentage of lottery winners are bankrupt by the 1 year mark. It's like 98% or something like that. And it's because they spend the money without wisdom. They use that money without wisdom. Now, it's not an absolute, as obviously there are people who are outside that. But who are the type of people who gamble? It's the type of people who are throwing money away already. Like that's what they do. They throw money into a system that is stacked against them. The vast majority of people who gamble will never see anything close to a return for what they have put in to that system. And yes, there's always those few people and that small percentage that are there to show you could be the winner. But if you are making a habit of throwing money away, unless you just happen to be lucky, you are going to be, it's just money in the hand of a fool. Verse 17, a friend loves at all times, and a relative is born to help in adversity. So a friend is someone who loves in the good and the bad. Like we look at wedding vows through better or poorer, richer, better or worse, richer or poorer. That vow is actually something that a lot of friends just take, like a true friend will make without the words. Like, yeah, sure. It's like that saying, a good friend will bail you out of prison. A best friend will be in the cell right next to you, saying that was awesome. It's one of those sayings. So like a friend loves at all times, and a relative is born to help in adversity. So this is a contrast. Is born for adversity. It's referring to the loyalty that a sibling or a relative. So the word for relative is a brother. So a brother is born to help in adversity. This is not to say that a brother, the note here says, this is not to say that a brother only shows loyalty when there is trouble, nor that he always does in these times. The true friend is the same as a brother. So what it's saying is a friend is the brother you get to choose, or sister you get to choose, or something like that. And it's and they're elevated to that status of I think of my best friends in this whole world, and they are on the status of my kin to me. I would not differentiate between them and my natural siblings at all. In fact, my best friend considers my siblings his siblings just because in a way, because they are. They're close to me, so they're close to him. And that was Kendall. He was on the other night. He came and, my sister was getting married, and she needed a DJ, and he happily stepped up and did that because he's like, yeah, that's your sister, it's my sister. Verse 18, the one who lacks wisdom strikes hands in pledge and puts up financial security for his neighbor. So this is another one of those things where people will not do the due diligence. Someone who lacks wisdom will shake on something without having read it. Now all of us, most of us, I'd say 95% plus of the population sign things all the time that we don't. Do you agree to these terms? Yes. Well, what are the terms? No one reads those. I'm not talking about those. I'm not talking about those sort of things. Although probably should read them. Don't have time. But I figure that there is that 1 or 2% out there that will read them and will alert me to anything that is problematic or troublesome. And I tend to be very tardy at signing those things or clicking those yeses. If there's a way to skip it, I will skip it. But so that out of the way. When you are getting it, I mean, I know people who constantly fall for scams, and it's not because they're fools in the sense of like the more malicious side of. They're just naive, and I'm like, how are you not reading this? How are you not, like, if something comes to you, you should be checking through a bunch of people, because you're setting yourself up to be taken advantage of. So don't put money, don't sign contracts, don't do any of that without doing your due diligence, doing appropriate level of investigating it. Verse 19, the one who loves a quarrel loves transgression. Whoever builds his gate high seeks destruction. Okay, so these two, how do they, what do they mean? These two parts of this proverb, and then how do they refer to, bounce off of one another? The one who loves a quarrel loves transgression. So that one's a little bit easier because quarreling, as we saw a couple of proverbs ago, quarreling is division. And what is sin? Sin is division. And transgression is division. So if someone loves quarreling, now there are places in life where you can't avoid it. You kind of have to go in. I mean, the Bible is full of wars, and many of them are like, God said, go and fight, because of, there's something that there's to fight against injustice or whatever. I mean, Jesus came not to bring peace, but a sword. So quarreling is not unavoidable. It's not avoidable. It's not avoidable. You can't avoid it. However, if you seek it, if you lust after it, if you glory in it, then you love transgression. You are loving it for the wrong reasons. Like, you should only love it for the outcome that is good, the good part of the outcome. There's always going to be collateral damage. There's always going to be something not good about it, but you should love it for the right reasons, for the the fact that people, out of that truth might be made known, but not for the adrenaline rush of the quarrel itself. Now, whoever builds his gate high seeks destruction. Well, what this... wait a second. I'm going to read this and see... Yeah. So the notes are saying similar to what I was imagining. So you build a high gate, it's going to draw attention, all right? And if you draw attention and you've got this high gate, it's going to make people go, I want to see what's on the other side of that. I want to go to the other side of that. So therefore, I'm going to knock that down. And so bragging or boasting about, in an outward fashion is only going to invite people to come in and go, are you sure? Or if they see a sign of wealth, they're like, okay, I'll come for the best example of this is Hezekiah. Hezekiah was mostly good king until the end. And then after that, who knows? He's the opposite of Manasseh, who started off terrible king and then repented. Hezekiah started off a great king, and then he seemed to go off the rails. I've serious concerns about his fate because of the choices he made at the end of the record there. And Hezekiah opens up the treasury of Jerusalem and of the temple, and he's like, here's all the golden stuff we have, guys, to these envoys from Babylon. And so Babylon's like, noted. They go home, they write a big note and said on their to-do list is like, take the gold from Jerusalem, because they're like, we know that there's a bunch of gold there. So don't be ostentatious. Don't be showy, because people will come and go, okay, really? Like, I mean, there is. I know I've talked about the bad side of tall poppy culture, which is in Australia, a tall poppy is someone who achieves well. And unfortunately, people who aren't seeking to be grandiose get cut down. People who are just seeking to use their gifts, they get cut down all the time. But where it does work as a cause and effect corrective is when people are over the top, displaying their brashness or even their over exaggeration of their abilities. They will quickly get cut down. So whoever builds his gate high seeks destruction. How do these two relate to one another? Well, both of them are seeking a quarrel. Both of them are seeking contention. One is seeking the quarrel directly in an offensive sense. The other one is kind of in a defensive sense, saying, "Hey, come at me, bro." So, verse 20, the one who has a perverse heart does not find good. The one who is deceitful in speech falls into trouble. So, one of those heart proverbs. If you're perverse in heart, you're not going to. It's like your heart's a magnet, and whatever is going on in your heart is going to attract things in real life. And so you're not going to attract beneficence. You're not going to attract abundance with a perverse heart. You're going to attract corruption and injustice, and that's just the way that is. And the one who is deceitful in speech falls into trouble in the same way. If your speech is deceitful, you'll fall into the traps that you lay, and that's not an enjoyable place to be. Hi, Dexter. Hi, Ephraim and Vanessa. I see 3 people are watching. I don't know if it's those 3. They are people who have been on at some point. So yeah. Verse 21. Whoever brings a fool into the world does so to his grief, and the father of a fool has no joy. Yeah. I was speaking to a father just yesterday, and he was lamenting some of the outcomes of his children, and not from a reflective stance, unfortunately, of where he could have done better, but just lamenting that things weren't better for him at the end of everything. So where we talked about how children are, grandchildren are a crown to the grandparents, and the crown of children is their parents. What this says to me is that having a child that doesn't live up to their potential it's a grievance, not a crown. It's a grievance, not a glory to a parent. Verse 22: a cheerful heart brings good healing, but a crushed spirit dries up the bone. This is very similar to one we saw yesterday or the day before. A cheerful heart is, it's something that mends your entire being. And we know, science has backed up that people who believe, just the placebo effect, or people who are positive, and they tend to have more fight. They tend to have a greater resilience, a greater healing factor. So it flows onto the physical as well. But a crushed spirit dries up the bones. People who give up, and you can see it in their face, you can see it in their eyes. People who've given up, they don't tend to hold on for very long. This is just something that we've seen just medically. How much more spiritually? A cheerful heart brings good spiritual healing, and a crushed spirit dries up your spiritual nature. So what can we do? Well, we can take our heart. If we have a heart that is broken, if we have a spirit that is crushed, we can do what David did in Psalm 51 and say, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit in me. Give me the cheerful spirit. Give me the joyful heart. And then, God will do that. God will do that bit by bit. I have a thing that I do with Victor. often in the morning, and especially at other times when he might be misbehaving, or acting in a selfish manner. We sit down and we say, is this nice? Once he calms down, sometimes he's a bit riled up, and sometimes he's he gets to that point where he's like, no. Do you think this is right to do? No. Do you want to change your heart? Yes. And then we ask Jesus to change his heart. And that's what we all should be doing. We all should be like that. That we should all see it as a simple prayer. Change my heart. Change my heart, God. Verse 23. A wicked person receives a bribe secretly to pervert the ways of justice. Another statement of fact. Just like a wicked person gives a bribe, so does a wicked person receive a bribe to pervert the ways of justice. Wisdom, so I mean, this is self-evident. So a wicked person receives a bribe secretly to pervert the ways of justice. So the wicked part here is the perverting of the ways of justice, as well as the lack of integrity in taking a bribe. Verse 24, wisdom is directly in front of the discerning person, but the eyes of a fool run to the ends of the earth. Oh, okay, so, I guess you could see wisdom is like glasses. It's like some glasses that you are wearing that alter your perception of the world. When you view the world through wisdom, everything changes. But the eyes of a fool, they're just all over the place. And imagine it's like glasses that are there are glasses that correct like lazy eye. There are glasses that correct different types of things. So your eyes are constantly, like if you're a fool, your eyes are constantly like darting all over the place. They're not focused. There's no focus. But wisdom focuses us on what we see and allows us to see it truly as it is. And so, wisdom is being likened here, at least to what I'm reading as like some form of eye corrective. Verse 25, a foolish child is a grief to his father and bitterness to the mother who bore him. Very similar to what we saw in verse 21. It's grief to both parents because they will not live up to, and I'm not talking here about expectations, but about hope. That every time a parent has a child, they have hope. And you can have hope without expectations. What I mean for that is you can have hope in a general sense for the fulfilling of all the potential of that child without, I expect you to walk in this path. Victor tells people, if you ask him, what do you want to be when you grow up? He'll say, I want to be a pastor. And that brings me joy. But if he turns around and says in a year's time or 2 years' time, I would like to be a pirate, I'm not going to be offended. He sometimes wants to be a pirate at home. But if he genuinely says, hey, I want to be a doctor, or I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a plumber, or I want to be an electrician, I won't begrudge him those things. They're all honorable things to do. And so I know that he will live up to his potential in whatever he puts his heart and passion towards, if he does it to the glory of God. So my hope will be secure if he does whatever he does to the glory of God, even if that's different to expectations. So if I expect him to do, to walk one path and he walks another, it doesn't matter. As long as he's doing it to the glory of God, my hope will be secure, and it won't be a grief to me or a bitterness to his mother. It is terrible to punish a righteous person, verse 26, and to flog honorable men is wrong. So it's we feel sick in society when we hear about people who have been punished who didn't do anything wrong, whether it's people who've been imprisoned for years and years and then evidence comes up to exonerate them, or whether it's like those horrible stories you hear from parts of the world where women are killed in honor killings when it seems just from the face of it that there was no evidence to back it up. It's just some petty thing that they do and they can get away with. Or whether you see missionaries who go and do something and they get flogged or killed for it. They didn't do anything wrong. Um, we don't like to see these things, and it is terrible. It is horrible to see the righteous suffer, or honourable people to be flogged. And that's not just flogging physically, but even I know of a person that I consider a dear friend and mentor who is being flogged in the court of public opinion, not by everyone, but by a select cabal of people in power right now. I know of a person who I loved, still do. He's just sleeping. I love dearly, who was dragged through the coals of the court of public opinion, and through a highly problematic and prejudicial process. And that's another person that, it sickens me today to think of what he went through. So, we've got to be careful, and there needs to be systems of, innocent until proven guilty. Sometimes that's only lip service. Sometimes countries, sometimes institutions only give lip service to that sort of an idea. We've seen systems in the world where people have been, guilt by association, guilt by accusation, Me Too movement, where people just all they have to do is, make an accusation, and that's enough to end a person's career, end their life, put them in prison. What we need to return to a system of fair balances when it comes to these things. So now that's not going to happen until, there is going to be injustice in this world, but every time, again, we sense that injustice, we're actually connecting with the Almighty, who himself sees that these things are terrible. Verse 27, we've got 2 to go. And that's good because I've got to prepare this sermon. The truly wise person restrains his words, and the one who stays calm is discerning. Again, this is another one of those proverbs that is in the theme of restraint of what you say. The more you say, the more you can say the wrong thing. This is something that if you've ever had a relationship with an intimate relationship with someone of the opposite sex, you will know that the more you say, every word can and will be but it can be used. What it means is the more you say, the more can be misunderstood, the more can be misinterpreted and taken the wrong way. So try to use restraint, and that's hard for me as an extrovert, hard for me as an expressive person to do sometimes. But sometimes I have to just take breaths and go, if I say X, how can that be understood? And so it's good. And the one who stays calm is discerning. Another one that's difficult for me, because being calm, it allows for being calm allows, like body language, 7% of it is what you say. There's another big portion of how you say it, and then there's a big portion of your body language. When you're calm, what you're doing is you're allowing the content to speak. You're actually not drowning it out with the tone, and this is something I need to learn all the time, because I do let it get out of. And sometimes your mind wants to say, hey, if you say it louder, they will understand it better. No. If you say it louder, you drown out what you're trying to say. And that's what this is indicating, and it's another one for me to take to heart. So, so staying calm allows the content to flow through without being drowned out by the other noise. Verse 28, and this is our final for this chapter. Even a fool who remains silent is considered wise, and the one who holds his tongue is deemed discerning. So a fool, someone who is naive or has no wisdom, or is a bit of a clown, when they stay silent, they can be mistaken for having some sense of wisdom, because they're not saying the things that they're not allowing that stream of consciousness to flow forward. So this flows through from the previous one as one of those twofers. So a truly wise person restrains his word, and even a fool who remains silent is considered wise. So if you, as someone who is seeking wisdom, is falling into this, Know that a fool can even a silent fool can top a person seeking wisdom who fails in this particular point. That's why you go to James, and James, the book of James, the letter of James in the New Testament it's the Proverbs of the New Testament. It's the wisdom literature of the New Testament, and he has a big part in the middle of James where he's talking about life and death being in the power of the tongue, and the one who controls the tongue controls the whole ship. It's the rudder that moves the entire ship. So if you can get control of your tongue, you will have this abundance of success in your life. So let's pray for that for us all now. Father, I just want to thank you for I want to thank you for our tongue. I want to thank you that it is an instrument of expression. It's an instrument of truth, but it's also an instrument that can be commandeered for evil. And Father, help us to learn restraint. Help our tongues, help the words of our mouth to be pleasing to you, bringing glory to you. Help us to maintain a calm demeanor. Help our unspoken our unspoken language and our intonation to not drown out the content that we are saying at times when it is important and imperative for healing balm to come from our words, and help us to soothe and control in all things. And Father, I just pray for everyone that this Sabbath will be a blessed day for them, and that they will rest in you, they will rest in wisdom, and they will be regenerated for the work that you have in front of them. May this be a day of blessing at Border Church, and for any others who are meeting around the way, and this whole weekend as well. May it flow. May the blessings of Sabbath flow out of the Sabbath day into the week, into Sunday, and into the rest of the week. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. If you want to join us tomorrow we are starting our new series on Corinthians. I'm going to take you on a guided tour of Corinth, and also a introduction to the two letters of Paul to the Corinthians and his time in Corinth, which precipitated the relationships with the Christian community. In fact, the inception and the beginning and processes of that Christian community there in Corinth. So that's going to be a fascinating overview as we take a helicopter ride over the books of the letters to the Corinthians. And then we're going to, after that, for the rest of this year, we're going to go into it in depth, drawing out lessons. Some of it is going to be some spicy content. Some of it's going to be some very interesting content. So please join us for that. Tomorrow, 10:30 a.m. New South Wales time is when our service begins. 9:30 a.m. Queensland time on the border at 169 Griffith Street, Coolangatta, or you can find it online and on YouTube, just where you're watching this. I hope that you will be blessed, and look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow as we do chapter 18 is your homework. Chapter 18, and we'll read through that one. Thank you for the love hearts, Dexter, I'm guessing. Yeah, that's you. 24 verses there in chapter 18. So we'll get through that one tomorrow after I put the kids to bed. Hopefully it will be... I'll make sure I put Erin to bed. She's a lot quicker, and then I'll be online sooner. Have a great night.